You've got a presentation that matters. Maybe it's for the board, maybe it's for a meeting, or maybe it's to help your team come to a decision. But you don't have weeks to prepare, you only have days. So you sit down ready to write and you think, oh God, where do I start? How do I structure it? You see, most people approach this in a linear way. They go from start to finish, and then they spend half their time trying to think of the introduction before getting into the meat of their presentation. I know, because that was me. But what I discovered cuts through that entirely, because I found out a way that you can write in a specific way that feels like you're cheating because you can plan your speech so quickly. And I am basically dyslexic, which means if I can do this, you definitely can do this. But before I go into the specific order, you first need to understand why you are giving a speech in the first place. Like, you don't get in your car not knowing where you're going to go. You always have a plan. You have a point A and a point B. You have a location. For example, I might get in the car and go to the gym. That is my plan. With your speech, you need a plan of action, and you figure out what that plan is by understanding what you want them to think, feel, or do after listening to you. That is the whole reason you are speaking in the first place. If you are speaking to the board, for a meeting, or to help your team make a decision, every speech that you do will be slightly different. They will have different focuses. You will want them to think, feel, or do something different after that speech. Which is why, in order for your speech to be successful, you need to know your B point, where you want to go, because then you can do the stuff in between. That's how we're going to create this writing process. So let's get into the meat of our presentation. You might think, oh, we'll go start to finish. We'll go with the introduction first. Don't. You're going to spend too long on it. What you need to do is establish the main points of your presentation. Now, your main points need to do 3 things. Number 1, they need to be simple. A baby needs to understand. If your points are 4 sentences long, how is your audience going to walk out that room remembering those points? Simplify your points as much as you possibly can. So that's the first thing about your points. The second thing about your points is having a memory device. Because if you just go in and go, your dream is not for sale. Imagine that was your point, your dream is not for sale. And you went in and go, your dream's not for sale. That's it. They're not going to remember that. You need to make them feel that. And the way you do that is through memory devices. Now, options for memory devices. You could have stories. Stories make them feel it. You could have analogies. Analogies make them understand. So if you've got a real complex topic, you can simplify that by using analogies. You can use activities that's really going to engage them and get them involved. You see how some people learn from seeing or reading? Some people learn from doing. I'm a doer. So if I do something, I learn it better. I remember it better, which is why activities can be great in your presentations. And the fourth one is acronyms. For example, I've got acronyms like DIALS, delivery, improv, auditory, language, and storytelling. That's something that I created to help with improving my communication. James Smith has the 4 S's: socials, squeeze, sale, scale. These acronyms make it a little bit easier for people to remember. So once you've got your point, you need to pick a memory device that links to that point. If it doesn't link, it's pointless. So when they're walking away from that speech, they don't remember your point straight away. They remember your memory device. Maybe they remember the story that you told, and then because of that, they then remember your point. And then going on to the third thing, and that is having an impact line. Because not only do you want it to be rememberable, you also want it to be repeatable. And an impact line is 10 words or less. If you want, you can push it to 12, because I've got one that is 12. And it is, you're not finished when you're full, you're finished when you're done. Or it could be, less is more, or your dream is not for sale, or I'm loving it, or just do it, or small things, big difference, or comfort is your short-term friend, but your long-term enemy. Now, these are lines that you can put within your memory device that they can repeat when they leave. And this will really set your point in stone into their mind. Imagine not paying rent and living in a house for free. It'd be pretty good, right? Now, you're going to do the same thing with your impact line. You're not going to pay rent to live in their head, but they're going to remember that line for weeks and weeks and weeks. It needs to be simple, that impact line. It needs to be repeatable, and it needs to be less than, let's go 12 words. It's got to be less than 12 words. And if you can tick those 3 boxes off, of being simple, having a memory device, and having an impact line, your main point is valid. You can use it as long as it links with what you want them to think, feel, or do after listening to you. So that is the premise, that is the meat, that is the substance of your speech. Now, once you have done that, that is when you can start planning the other bits of your speech. But when you just start with the introduction, it makes it very hard. You don't know where you want to go. So start with the substance, and then we can branch off. And if you want help with creating an influential presentation, this will show you how to create an influential presentation. It will help with these points that we've just gone through now in a little bit more detail. But going on to the next thing, you see, once we've got the main points, we need to create the conclusion. Now, I'm going to give you 3 options that you can do for your conclusion. Option number 1 is looping back to their problem and how it will be different now. Here's an example. So now when you go and sit on your desk and go to write your speech out, instead of starting from the introduction, you will know exactly what you need to do so you don't waste any time, and it will make it feel like you're cheating. You see, I've looped back to the problem that I mentioned at the very start of this video. That's one way that you could loop it in. So that's the first option. Loop it back to their problem and how it will be different now because they've listened to your speech. Option number 2 is give them an immediate action or reflection point. So one of my speeches is all about building resilience. Now I go through the formula, I go through the acronym, and my ending paragraph is, instead of leaving you with a statement, I'm going to leave you with a question. What's your non-negotiable going to be? So I've left them with something in their mind. Obviously I've built it up beforehand, it is a bit of a bigger conclusion than that, but that is their departing thoughts. So when they leave that room, they have something in their mind that they are going to act upon. Give them one actionable step that they can do that links to your speech. And the third option is by opening a loop. You know when you watch a series on Netflix and it's 11 p.m. at night and you're thinking, all right, this is going to be my last episode. But then you get to 10 seconds before the end and they open a loop. They intrigue you in. They create some tension. And you're thinking, all right, well, it's at 11 o'clock. If I watch one more episode, it'd be 11:40, which means if I go to bed at 11:40, I'll still get at least 7 hours of sleep. So you go, fuck it. And you watch the next episode. Only to get to the next episode after that, and you're thinking, oh, I could maybe watch one more. Because what they have done is open a loop. And what you can do with your presentations is open a loop for another problem that you can solve. For example, although planning a speech is very, very important, if you can't deliver it in the right way, it doesn't matter how good your planning is, you won't be able to inspire, influence, or inform because the way you are coming across. So you start with the problem you've solved and you open a new loop to solve a new problem. So that is the 3 options for your conclusions. So once you've done the premise of your speech, the meat of your speech, and the conclusion of your speech, the next thing to do is the introduction to your speech. Now, the introduction has 2 main things that you need to focus on, which is why I've created it in this specific order. The first thing that you need to do with your introduction is grab their attention. You're grabbing their attention so you can then talk about the main substance of your speech. Because if you don't get that attention from the get-go, they're not going to listen. It's like when you're raising a kid. If you can't get their attention, there's no way that you're going to get them to eat the snack that you want, or there's no way you're going to get them to put their shoes on. That's why you're going to come out with a bang. You need to start with a bang. Now, this is my own personal favorite of how you start with a bang. You come out with a story, but don't just do a story. You're then going to think of a prop or a physical action that you can do that relates to your story. For example, Dr. Jill was talking about a human brain. She brought a human brain out. Joe something from TEDx, I don't know his surname, he got in a plank straight away. You see, both of these 2 individuals, they broke the grain. Now, if you can break the grain with your introduction, that's a bang. That's going to grab their attention because it's something completely different. Now, once you've started with the bang, you then need to give them the BFP. Now, the BFP is the big fucking promise. Give me something that I'm going to gain. Don't go, oh, I'm going to tell you about my marketing strategies today. Go, I'm going to give you the tools that you can implement in your own marketing strategies so you can increase your commissions by £2,000. Give me a reason to listen. Now, if you've done your research correctly, this should automatically relate to the audience. If you're giving them a BFP, which has no relation to their wants, their needs, and their problems, you've not done your research and you probably shouldn't be speaking in the first place. But you start with a bang and then you give them the BFP, the big fucking promise, a reason for them to listen. You catch their attention, then intrigue them in by telling them you're going to solve one of their problems. And then that is when you'd get into the meat of your speech. So we've done the main points, we've done the conclusion, and we've done the introduction. Now just reorder them and link the points together. Maybe it'll take a sentence, maybe it's 2 sentences to link your intro to your main point and your main points to your conclusion. That is it. That is how you write a speech. Then after that, that is when you would do your slides. Don't do your slides at the start, because the whole reason you're speaking is to speak. You're not speaking for people to look at your slides. Your slides are there to supplement what you're saying. Just think of omega-3s and vitamin tablets. You take them to supplement your diet. But if you're already getting those nutrients through food, you wouldn't supplement. It's the same with your presentation. If the slide is going to supplement what you're saying and benefit what you're saying, include it. If it's not, don't include it. And remember, there is free links below to help you with your communication. So now after learning this formula, you don't need to waste hours and hours sat on a desk thinking, okay, what should I write? You don't need to waste it on your introduction. You know exactly what you need to do step by step. But although you know the step-by-step process to creating a great presentation, if you are really nervous when you have to give that speech, you're not going to be able to get across your message as well as you can. Which is why, if you struggle with your nerves in public speaking, you should probably watch this video. And you see what I did there? I opened a loop to a new problem. You see, I practice what I preach.